I just feel like if we're gonna steal trends from the French in 2020, it should be this and not this. Seriously though, I totally understand anyone who has an unrealistic infatuation with Paris. You are valid, because I myself, a long time ago, was plagued by the dove emoji and became slightly obsessed with the French girl aesthetic. It coincided with me discovering French New Wave films, falling in love with Anna Karenina, and using Parisian architecture Pinterest boards as a form of escapism to deal with my disgusting 3-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. It's also totally common, and there's even a phenomenon known as Paris syndrome. Paris syndrome is defined as being a sense of disappointment exhibited by tourists who visit Paris and realize that Paris does not live up to their expectations.
Symptoms include acute delusional states, hallucinations, feelings of persecution, derealization, depersonalization, anxiety, and also psychosomatic manifestations such as dizziness, tachycardia, sweating, and vomiting.
I was also transitioning out of my e-girl streetwear aesthetic, nothing wrong with that, and I hold all these outfits near and dear to my heart. But I was just getting bored and I didn't want to maintain my bleached hair anymore, so it was time for a new change. As a sidebar, and I think this is the fault of social media, but I don't think anyone should feel trapped by an aesthetic. It's a way of expression, not a form of social conformity. I see a lot of videos on TikTok and on YouTube of people being like, help me choose an aesthetic. I just like so many aesthetics. And you don't have to choose. Don't choose. Fuck the man. But anyway, I landed on the French girl as my new direction. And I'll admit that looking back, I feel like half the reason I found this style so enticing was because of the enormous amount of fashion magazine French girl propaganda on sites like Vogue, Vanity Fair, Man Repeller, etc. But before we discuss why the French girl is popular, let's make sure everyone knows who she is. So if we're going to define the modern French girl for anyone who is kind of unclear with that term, we can pinpoint her down to 1960s and 70s and 90s reminiscent, effortlessly chic, seductive, aloof, with stylishly messy hair and a few statement designer pieces, living a somewhat bohemian, easygoing life. And it's important to note that the French girl does not exist solely in Paris, though that is most likely her home base. Because she lives a lavish life off of generational wealth, we can also see her lounging on a Grecian beach, topless, reading a copy of Sartre, or in an Italian village, carrying a woven basket full of freshly picked oranges. As a disclaimer, because I will continue to use the term French girl pretty gratuitously, the French girl, capital F, capital G, is a bourgeois archetype that basically only exists on social media. Like, she doesn't really exist in real life, and she's not at all representative of French women as a whole, similar to how Blair Waldorf is not representative of American girls.
I hate when I'm in a foreign country, especially in America. They're the worst. Each time I wear black or like lose my temper or say anything about anything, you know, they always go, oh, it's so French, it's so cute. Ugh, I hate that. I can't stand it.
But if you're still confused, let's break down this look even more. I like to separate the French girl influences into two camps. The first camp is, of course, the classic icons that a lot of French girls like to emulate today, such as Anna Karenina, Brigitte Bardot, Françoise Hardy, Catherine Deneuve, Jane Birkin. And of course, there's like a lot of French women who have made an impact in the fashion industry. But I feel like this subset of women are the women that a lot of modern day French girls like to emulate more so than anyone else. And then our second troop, I would say, are modern day influencers on Instagram who really embody this French girlness, such as Jean Dema, Sabrina Sokol, Camille Cherrier, and Anne Lorme, to name just a few of the vast pool of modern French girls. But now let's take a look at some of the major wardrobe staples. So I would say that every French girl has a loose, flowy blouse in her closet. Often they are button-downs, but not always. And they are usually in white or ivory shades. They can be paired with cigarette pants, baggy pants, midi skirts, and denim shorts. In transitional and winter seasons, you can see them wearing oversized blazers and light-colored pastel sweaters. And then for the spring-summer period, short dresses are the go-to. Daywear options usually have either spaghetti straps or puff sleeves, and they're normally in solid bright colors or have small patterns. I've noticed that dresses can be either slim fitted or flowy, but generally the flowy ones are still fitted at the bodice. Silk dresses are also very popular, worn both as daywear and evening wear. Last but not least, the dreaded jeans and t-shirt combo. This is probably the only outfit that I can't really get behind. And I mean, if you dress in jeans and a t-shirt, that's totally fine. Like, that's not a fashion faux pas. I also dress in jeans and a t-shirt sometimes. But a lot of people also wear jeans and a t-shirt on a regular basis. And the only time the fashion industry calls people fashion icons for doing so is when they're skinny white bitches like Kendall Jenner. Popular shoe choices include kitten heels, loafers, Mary Janes, strappy sandals, sometimes sneakers, and popular bag choices include designer bags or small leather purses, or basket bags in the summertime. And then some notable brands that I associate with the French girl aesthetic include Rouge, Realization Par, Reformation, With Jeans, Cezanne, Orsent Iris, Redone, Monsieur Paris, and then, of course, luxury labels such as Chanel, Dior, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and Gucci. French girl capitalism has been super successful. It is a recurring trend that utilizes the ever-enduring appeal of the French girl to market new sophisticated styles every decade. According to a 2017 interview with Charlotte Austin, an editor at List, the fashion marketplace grew 45% in overall searches for French contemporary brands in the 3-month period. Emails and articles on how to get the French girl look consistently outsell products compared to other articles. But I haven't answered the main question yet, which is, why is she so popular? So I feel like to understand the popularity of the French girl, we have to dive into the history. I would say that the allure of France's perceived opulence as we know it today probably started with Louis XIV's reign. He came to power in 1643, and at the time, Spain was actually the center of fashion. France was not producing a lot of luxury goods, and they were mainly importing from places like Madrid, Milan, and Brussels. But Louis XIV was determined to change this. He firmly believed that luxury production was important for the economic fortune of a country, as well as to maintain the prestige of the monarchy. He set course and agenda to build up France's luxury industry, and during his reign, 1/3 of Parisian wage earners were employed in the textiles and clothing industry. Louis also set a strict core dress code to maintain the demand for French luxury goods, and he also often underwrote these expenses. And of course, he also employed a successful marketing/propaganda campaign. He subsidized the production of fashion plates by major French artists to promote luxury goods. The captions were usually satirical and sarcastic and contained sexual innuendos to capture the attention of its affluent international audience. France's vivacious fashion scene led inevitably to Charles Worth, an Englishman, to establish his fashion house there in 1858. He was a popular dressmaker among French aristocrats and the first to be associated with the term haute couture. So that's just a brief overview of how France became associated with luxury and fashion. However, I would argue that the French girl appeal was an American media invention, so let's unpack that a little bit. Americans have been in Paris since the days of the American Revolution. Think Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. Because the United States was still so new, many Americans believed that Europe had a rich cultural history that the US could not match. And so wealthier American aristocrats would travel to Europe to see the arts and culture. There was an experience called the Grand European Tour, which was considered to be like a rite of passage among wealthy American elites. Throughout the 19th century, American scholars and writers started traveling to Paris and writing about their adventures there. These writings eventually spread around the United States, adding to the allure and mystique of Paris. Then in 1892, Vogue was established. Vogue was originally marketed towards wealthy New Yorkers, and they contained a lot of articles on Parisian arts and culture. Articles like how to wear a hat like a French woman, similar to articles that we see today actually, started during this time period. And Vogue low-key helped establish Paris as a trend-setting city. The 1920s is considered to be the golden age of Paris. This was mostly due to the strong arts and literature scene, which of course helped its reputation of being an inviolably cultured city. The franc, which was France's currency at the time, was severely depressed due to the war. The American dollar was really strong in comparison, and so it was very easy for Americans to attain a good life living in Paris. American writers such as Hemingway and Fitzgerald popularized a particularly romantic, decadent, and lively vision of Paris. By the end of the 30s, the Great Depression hit, and a lot of Americans packed their bags and moved home because they could no longer finance their livelihoods in Paris. I assume that over the course of World War II, many Americans felt a nostalgic way about Paris, and we can see that unfold in Hollywood movies such as Casablanca and An American in Paris.
But what about us?
We'll always have Paris.
However, following World War II, America established itself as a global power and pushed for increased tourism policies in the Marshall Plan as to reduce the amount of direct financial aid that they would have to give to Europe. To improve their tourism industry among Americans who now possess the oh-so-powerful dollar, France increased the number of English-speaking attractions and establishments, as well as the availability of commercial products in Paris. Interestingly enough, many Americans were opposed to what they saw as Americanization in Paris, longing for a more authentic vision of Paris. This new demand for an authentic Paris led to a resurgence of Frenchness in the city, sometimes to an overdramatic, insincere level. For instance, according to the travel book Art Bouchois' Paris, sidewalk cafes were a most popular outdoor sport. While eating at cafes was part of the culture, its importance was definitely exaggerated for American tourists. This time period is where we can really see Paris being set apart from other European cities in the eyes of tourists. Compared to cities like London and Berlin, Paris did not really suffer from physical destruction during World War II, and so it was a lot easier for American tourists to visit and kind of ignore the political and economic problems that the country was facing. Eugene Fodor's travel guides, which were very popular in the 1950s, emphasized how Paris was the perfect place for escapism from everyday life. Guidebooks would also have articles like How to Win Over a French Woman, which added to the overall mystique of the French woman and set her far apart from American women. In sum, what I'm really trying to emphasize is that Paris and the idea of Paris existed completely differently in the eyes of Americans versus the eyes of actual Parisians. In the 1920s and 30s, Americans had a shit ton of money and they were able to live a very glamorized lifestyle compared to a lot of French people who were suffering the economic consequences of World War I. And following World War II, Americans pushed for a pseudo-authentic vision of Paris that was actually not very authentic at all. I honestly believe that this pseudo-authentic vision of Paris still exists today.
Everyone knows the Eiffel Tower hole is the best. Je ne sais quoi, sacre bleu, au revoir.
France is clearly in a different economic position than it was 70 years ago, but I feel like its reputation in American media has stayed roughly the same. Okay, so what's wrong with French girl capitalism? Everybody wants to be the French girl. She's cool, she's sexy, she's feminine, and she does this all without even trying. And there's never anything wrong about dressing a certain way or being French for that matter. The problem stems from society's lust over a very small subset of French women, which has allowed businesses to capitalize off of this lust. And rather than saying, hey woman, here's a lipstick brand you should wear, they're saying, this is a lip color that French girls wear, and French girls are the epitome of femininity and sex appeal, so if you buy this, you'll be one step closer to that ideal. Also, the things surrounding French girl optimization tend to be quite shallow and misogynistic. They're generally all about maintaining your appearance, losing weight, and dating. What's more is that all these marketing schemes are trying to get you to perform femininity in a very specific way, and they want you to do it all the time. When we move from an aesthetic to a lifestyle, that's when a problem is created. The last thing I have to say is that the point of the French girl is that she does everything effortlessly and naturally. But I think the idea of being effortless when it comes to aesthetics is counterproductive. Like, if we're going to go on diets, stress ourselves over the photos we post on social media, spend hours learning how to do different hairstyles, we should at least talk about it. Pretending all this is effortless, like, actually puts down a lot of women who don't realize that everything does take effort. You know, if someone is not born looking a certain way or doesn't know how to do a certain makeup style, like, they will feel worse about themselves if they feel like everyone else is able to do this just naturally. If we set up a dichotomy between women who are born this way versus everyone else, we are ignoring the ways in which the system encourages all of us to maintain certain appearances. So I guess what I'm trying to say is think critically about the ways you feel pressured to or want to be perceived. Yeah, I think I'll end on that note. See you later.